But when it moves to majority, does that explanation hold?
When it goes to the early majority, it may or may not hold, and that's fine. But the fact is that you have built a very strong foundation. A foundation where, see, you, again, in India, we are, like you said, a very value conscious nation, culturally speaking.
Yeah.
Imagine, let's say that you buy this shirt, and it is not a branded shirt like a incumbent branded shirt like Louis Philippe or Allen Solly. Let's say your chacha or your phupha or your neighbor says, "ये कौन सा shirt लेके आ गया? बड़ी wrinkly सी लग रही." Right? And if your answer is, "नहीं जी, ये तो ऋतिक रोशन ने इश्तिहार किया है," how stupid will you look? Right? How stupid are you going to look?
Right.
Now, what you have done there is you have shown your emotion to your social jury and said that I made an irrational choice. And that is not respected in India. In India, rational choices are respected. And a rational choice will always be rooted in a functional benefit. Now, let's say you bought this shirt, that same Fupa came and I said, "Yaar, kya should do?" And you say कि यार आपको पता है इसमें 1000 thread count है और 3 degree cooler लगता है मेरे को, something like that. Now that is a rational explanation for your behavior.
Yeah, 1+1 offer था.
That could also be a rational. But see, brands don't get built on offers.
Yeah, brands.
That's one of the toolkits in brand building. It cannot be the foundation of a brand. वो 1+1 offer में लेके फिर बोलेगा शर्ट में 3 degree cooler आता है या 1000 thread count है. Now, the moment you say that, you have shown how smart you are to that skeptic social jury and said कि हाँ यार देखो आपको भी खरीदना चाहिए. That's when referral starts happening. That's when brands start getting built. Right? Now, the fact is that by the time you get to the early majority, this is so ingrained in the brand's narrative. Whether it's on the packaging, whether it's inside the store, on the website, on the A+ content on Amazon, or wherever it is, right? That the brand might not even have to talk about it. The fact that it keeps you 3 degrees cooler is well understood by everyone, and the brand has now gone to emotional benefits and advertising and communication, which is saying, okay, now that customers of my brand are 3 degrees cooler, what can they do with that? They can make cool decisions in meeting rooms. They can be cool while playing a sport and therefore play it better. They can be cool and work harder in the hot environment of tropical India, blah, 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 which are very emotional positions for brands to take, and brands get built on emotional positions, but built on a foundation that is always functional because that allows you justification. So that scales over time.
The only time I've seen this thread count thing, especially to my parents, when they go and buy, I went with them to buy bedsheets. So let's say Maspers or Home Store or some other brand, and they're always explaining, and I think parents usually have that puzzle because they don't really know, like some of them, like my parents don't know, like what is it, 8,000 thread count in bedsheet.
More is more. More is better.
Probably that's the assumption. I don't think they know like what is
the difference between 8,000 and 3,000. If you ask them, they don't know. But 8,000 certainly sounds better than 3,000, right?
But that's a good way. Now I get where this is like built or ingrained into like foundation of consumer psychology. Like, so probably the salesperson also gets that training. Like talk about
absolutely
this. Talk about this.
Absolutely. So, for example, Lakme, for example, says that my lipstick is 9 to 5 all day, blah blah blah. That's the communication, and the communication is just about like you don't need to keep doing a touch up, so you can go about your day. That's the communication for the lipstick. The product truth about that is it's got XYZ ingredients that are anti-smudge proof, anti-transfer proof, etc., that allow for the lipstick to last for all day. That's the training given to the BA. So when the customer goes to the BA counter, what she has seen on a YouTube or an Instagram or on TV is, apply the lipstick once and it'll last all day. What the BA is telling her is why. So the story continues and
reinforced continuation. Yeah. So, what are some of the common mistakes, especially during the 0 to 1 journey, which you notice founders making? Maybe after they've received a little bit of funding, or maybe before that. So, let's assume they passed all the tests, like they're high trust, they're fine, everything is check, check, check. And now, what are the mistakes they could make?
see, one is that balance between being perseverant and being flexible and empathetic to your consumer. I think that certainly is a kind of like a mistake if you're too pig-headed about being just perseverant, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, saying ये product है अब यही बेचूंगा मैं. And then I tried customer segment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm looking at customer segment 18, 19, 20 and not realizing कि it's not working. Yeah, it is good to take that product and say कि अच्छा customer segment 1 or 2 के साथ काम नहीं किया, चाहे 3, 4 से काम कर जाएगा. But that balance of saying at which segment do I say कि अच्छा do I need to go and reformulate my product? Right, that balance sometimes is very important for and I only think a founder can perceive it because only he or she has that everyday interaction with the customer to be able to understand कि नहीं यार ये मेरा टाइप का कस्टमर नहीं है, ये मेरा टाइप का कस्टमर नहीं है, इसको ये समझेगा versus saying कि नहीं यार ये प्रोडक्ट ही मैं जाके रिफॉर्मुलेट करके फिर से लॉन्च करता हूँ. वो कस्टमर सेगमेंट 3 करेक्ट था.
Going back to square one.
And then launching a new product. Second one is, I think, not innovating enough. Saying कि
fearful?
No. Just saying that कि मैंने एक product बना लिया है, अब मैं यही बेचूंगा, and it might be selling. But the biggest cost of building brands today is customer acquisition cost.
Right.
And once you've acquired the customer, what's your land and expand strategy, right? How else can you service that customer once he's in your franchise? You need more product for that. You can't say that एक product लेगा हो गया. So it is important that they build a high velocity NPD engine upfront. Otherwise, what might happen is they will not have enough product to sell to each customer that they acquire, and their overall economics will start unraveling over time. Because CAC keeps going up.
Right.
The fallacy that most founders have is they think with scale CAC will come down. No, it doesn't. It keeps scaling with scale. the only salvation is retention at the end of the day. So that's one. The second one is not being able to institutionalize consumer insight. Right. What I mean by that is founders start companies based on gut instinct. And they must have talked to like 10,000 customers, 5,000 customers, whatever it is, right? And started a company based on some insight. Either it was a personal issue that happened in their life, or they saw it with friends, family, or they just did some top-down market research and actually went and validated it on the ground. Either way, they've come with an insight and they started a company. The point is कि in the initial days, it is okay to be running with your gut and saying कि हाँ यार मेरे को मेरा customer समझ आता है, इसको ऐसे लॉन्च कर देंगे या ये प्रोडक्ट लॉन्च कर देंगे या कस्टमर को कंपटीशन में ये पसंद नहीं आ रहा था तो इसको ऐसे चेंज करके लॉन्च कर देंगे. बट हाउ डू यू गेट दैट कंज्यूमर इनसाइट टू बी इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज्ड एंड डेटा ड्रिवन, एंड हाउ डू यू गेट डिसीजंस टू बिकम डेटा ड्रिवन इन योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एंड नॉट ड्रिवन बाय an attitude which is my way or the highway, and be open enough to being challenged on your own beliefs by the data. I think that's very important because otherwise false positives start happening. वो confirmation bias starts happening. Third one is in our world, thinking of brand building as communication development. It's not. Brand is a mix of 6 P's. There's product, there's packaging, there's pricing, there's proposition, there's place, there's promotion. All of it have to sync together. And if one is out of sync with the other, the consumer doesn't get the consistent experience of the brand. And the bedrock of early stage brand building is great product, great buying experience, including post-purchase delivery experience, post-use customer service experience, unboxing experience, The second one is the packaging, both primary, secondary, tertiary. Third one is pricing, of course. These three have to come together at the very early stage. And then you can build proposition, promotion over time. Place is about distribution that will happen over time. But this is the fundamental, right? If you don't get product, packaging, pricing, customer experience right, you're not going to build a brand. And spending on money on the top of the funnel before you've got all these basics right also is bad for business, because you don't have a good conversion mechanism and you've opened the mouth of the funnel.
Yeah, so they will have bad experience.
And it'll be leaky.
And would you say these are also some of the signs when you say there is early traction, but the brand might not work? You could see some of these signs are not falling into place.
See, not having high velocity NPD is an execution issue. You can always fix that. Right? It's about putting a process in place. It's about getting the right partnerships in place, maybe some team members, maybe some advisors. It's an execution issue. Consumer insight and institutionalization of that is a culture issue. Right? It stems from, all culture in every company stems from the founder, and it's a culture issue. If that cannot get institutionalized. And to me, CX and early brand building through product pricing and packaging and being iterative about it is an empathy issue. Either you're empathetic and you really want to solve the problem, or you're a square peg round hole person saying my way or the highway. So early on, you will understand whether the founder is in a position to execute on all of this, is in a position to be vulnerable, both with her or his founders and her or his team, which is on the CICX piece. And I think if those boxes are ticked, I think that exploration itself gets founders off to their first, growth journey and ready for the next check.
Right. One of the themes which I wanted to discuss with you, because this year we are largely working with a lot of consumer brands, health, travel, pet care. These are some of the things which we are touching. Differentiation, especially at the accelerator stage, that's where we struggle. Like, how should founders think about differentiation in these markets when they are coming as a new brand, right?
Yeah.
Because they have limited manpower, they have limited capital, they have limited mental bandwidth to actually sit down and do it, because they're surviving against the odds, and then every day is a struggle, and they don't have that time to zoom out, and maybe it's their own savings they're putting in. They're not funded usually when we start working with them. Typically 50 lakhs to 1 CR of ARR. So and differentiation is a real challenge, right? Because it breaks into your story. Let's say you're going for a seed round. Everybody wants to hear about, okay, how are you different?
Yeah.
That's the first question.
Yeah.
So break down, I want you to break down, like, because you have so much experience on the branding side. How should founders think about it? What are some of the mental models they can use to do like a stripped down version of differentiation, or how to even think about it?
Yeah. So I think this is a fairly common problem statement, right? A lot of founders we work with who are doing not maybe 50 lakh 1 crore a year, but maybe 50 lakh 1 crore a month also still haven't figured it out fully. I think the one intervention that we found helpful is give the founder a long rope. 30 days, 180 days, 90 days, 180 days, 3 months, 6 months, jitna bhi time chahiye unko. But just there's a chart that we work with them on, saying that, listen, at the end of this period, the best of your knowledge, let it not be data driven also. We can always, if you remember, where we talked about consumer insights before, saying have a hypothesis, then test it out in the market.
Correct.
So this is hypothesis, right? And we're saying that to the best of your abilities. We can always validate it later. But I want to have a conversation with you about your consumer and what are the top 10 things that matter to them when they're buying the category. How are they evaluating the category? For example, अगर आप घर देखने जाते हो, क्या देखते हो? आप देखते हो ना, ईस्ट फेसिंग होना चाहिए, सनलाइट अच्छी नहीं है कि नहीं है, वास्तु है, फिर वो किचन ओपन प्लान है कि कैसा है, वो एक्स्ट्रा बाथरूम है कि नहीं. These are category purchase drivers.
Right.
Locality, of course. So these are category purchase drivers. It doesn't mean, I mean, it's not like a Rustomji, Palonji or a Lodha or any other builder ka. I'm not talking about those preferences. I'm talking about category mein importance kya hai customer ko. So in whatever category you operate, you please put down what are the top 10 most important things in reverse order, to the best of your abilities. So those become your rows. And on your columns, I'm saying just put down who is your source of growth. Where are you sourcing growth from, and how do your customers rate those brands on those parameters?
Correct.
Why is that important? Because your product differentiation will come from two factors. One is something that's important enough to the customer. I mean, if you're creating a product differentiation on the color of dog food and that doesn't matter to the customer, then why even bother about it, right? If brown is good enough, then why even bother about it? Just by having pink dog food.
Correct.
It's not good. Consumer is not evaluating the category based on that. So it has to be important enough to the customer and not highly competed or not highly owned by one of your competitors or one of your source of growth. That is a market wide space, because that category purchase attribute is important to the customer and not still taken by any of the competitors. So for that, even if it's a small set of early adopters, 10%, 15%, 12% of the market, for whom that's a very important category purchase attribute and no other brand is solving it, it's a market wide space. And that is the foundation on which you can build your brand. That's something that we work with our founders on, saying, listen, this is not in our investor parlance a CP, it is a CS, where we put in the money and say, okay, let's discover this together. And I think one of the things that's common in Fireside is all of us are very curious. We are very curious about customers. We love building consumer businesses, and we love the fact that we have the opportunity to work alongside the founders and decode consumers. So irrespective of who the founder is working with in my team, this is one common thing that they will encounter at some point of time. Because we're just curious, because even if that specific person on the deal may not be as curious, in 3 months within Fireside, we will be curious to know in the startup that she or he invested in, what's this chart looking like?
Right. And I think it's fair enough also, right? Because just a couple of weeks ago for something, we were just looking at consumption as part of India's GDP.
Right.
Among G20 countries.
Yeah.
So for US, it's around 70% of GDP is consumption. After that, in absolute value, it's India, which is around 60-65% as percentage of overall GDP. So we are largely a consumption-driven economy.
Yeah.
That also means we are more prone to demand shocks at a GDP level.
Yeah.
So anything which kind of shakes the consumption pattern also reflects in the GDP immediately, right? But if you look at consumption overall, let's look at everybody talks about this Bloom framework of India 1, 2, 3. How Sajid has divided this India 1 at the top and 2 and 3, right? You started your career in the hinterland when you were in the UP, when you mentioned that you were going through and then when I travel through tier 2 and tier 3 towns, I see this massive unlocking of demands. So people want to wear, maybe they're not wearing Comet, but they are buying sneakers, probably at a lower price point. So enormous potential for brands to be created across categories, right? That's my understanding when I interact. When I'm traveling, I always like to ask people what are you watching on YouTube, what kind of apps you have on your phone. Just anybody you're sitting with, traveling on a train, just ask like what are you watching, etc. So what are your takes from emerging India, basically, right? Especially from a consumption point of view, because you spend so much time thinking about white spaces where new brands are going to emerge. India one is fairly easy to imagine, right?
Sure.
For example, yesterday I saw you back this Kusha Kapila's new creator-led brand, right? Which is, I think, similar to Kim Kardashian's brand. So it's mostly on a similar expectations of what is happening in the West. But if you travel outside Tier 1 and metros, India is very different from, let's say, Southwest US or Ohio, Michigan, right? It's
absolutely
very different.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the trends which you observe are important and sort of emerging, or some green shoots which you see which founders can capture on?
Yeah, I think, see, India too is an amazing brand opportunity. 100, depending on the report you read, 120, 150 million households, $2,500 to $4,000 of household income. In real terms, have anywhere between $500 to $2,000 of disposable income, which did not exist 10 years ago, right? And that's net new consumption that's getting added now over the next 5 to 7 years. So these are households where they were largely utilitarian in nature, and now for the first generation will be discretionary in nature, right? Couple that with the fact that at least if you future gaze about 5-7 years out, we will have 400 to 500 million internet shoppers in India. Today we have 150 to 200 million, depending on which report you read. So net new customers who didn't have more than utilitarian, pocket to spend, now shopping online, discovering brands online is a massive opportunity. But these customers are still new to discretionary consumption, as opposed to India One, and therefore ask harder questions of their brands in terms of value delivered, right? And therefore, the question we ask when looking at India Two is saying, to how are you delivering value? And because ultimately that question will come. We've talked about it, the shirt example, etc. And typically that lies either in product innovation, material innovation, or supply chain innovation. And that allows people to pass value down the chain. For example, we invested in a company called Frubon.
I know Frubon.
You know Frubon. Have you tried the products?
I have not tried, but I know about it.
You live in Delhi, you should try and give us feedback.
Sure.
हम तो फाउंडर को बोल के थक गए कि आप बैंगलोर भी लॉन्च कर लो, क्योंकि हमें we have invested and we cannot make our friends and family try it, and he like पहले इधर की डिमांड तो खत्म करने दो मेरे को. And that's how deep the market can be, right?
Right.
He's talking about building a 1,000 crore brand just in Rajasthan, NCR and West UP. That's it. He never has to go out of that. He like, boss, पहले ये तो खत्म कर लूं मैं, उसके बाद आऊंगा बैंगलोर आराम से, right? So India too can be that massive an opportunity. Now there, what he's doing is he's done some supply chain innovation, technology in supply chain, how he collects milk. So that's why his cost of procurement of milk is one of the lowest in the country, because the density of procurement is higher. So using the same QCOM, food delivery, density equation reversed on collection.
Right.
That same model to reduce collection cost. And so that is one alpha he adds to the business. So he's able to pass value back. The second is in manufacturing, instead of dairy has fat and non-fat as two components, solid non-fat and fat. Fat typically ends up in butter, ghee, etc. He's saying ghee बेच के gross margin तो बनता नहीं है इंडिया में. So let me add some of that fat back to my core dairy products of paneer, ice cream, etc., which make it more creamier. Now that's a category attribute which we spoke about, which is important enough to the customer, not occupied as a positioning by any of the incumbent brands. And he's delivering that through core product innovation, right? By adding the fat back into paneer, he's making it softer. By the way, he spray dries the whey and adds whey back into the paneer to make high protein paneer for the people who like to work out and go to the gym. So he has options in paneer. In ice cream, he's adding the fat back to make it more creamier. So it's not like when you take it out of the freezer, it's not like your teeth are biting into the ice cream.
Right.
So core consumer value delivered through supply chain innovation, or in this case, both manufacturing and supply chain innovation. But in some cases, so that's what we're looking for, right? We're saying that there are so many categories. For example, spices. Now, what's happening is that young Gen Z India 2 is seeing its country cousins of India 1 having burgers and pizzas and pastas and all that, and saying, "Hame bhi khana hai."
Yeah.
But thoda Indian taste mein, cost mein, etc. But where are the brands that deliver oregano, peri peri, this chili flakes, etc. And I mean, you have Everest masala, you have MDH masala, but where are the brands for all of this? And this cuisine is coming home.
Yeah.
We can see it coming home for India too. But that requires another rethink of the supply chain for it. Because you'll have to go down and integrate into the procurement of these spices and the processing of the spices to deliver it at a price point, cost, etc. that's logical for India too. So I think opportunities to bahut hai. Beverages mein opportunities hai. For example, sugar obviously is enemy number 1 of everybody. But today, both Gen Z India 1 is asking for higher order benefits of fortification, of saying ki yaar, can I have prebiotics in my drink, etc. But the India 2 Gen Z is saying ki boss, can you deliver more energy to me? Can you deliver more protein to me in my beverages through whey, etc. whatever, right? The question really always is saying ki okay, you need a better product, you're willing to pay for it. So आप देखो, इंडिया हॉट कंट्री, जूते तो बहुत कम लोग पहनते हैं. इंडिया 2 में जाओगे तो इट बी लाइक 10% पेनिट्रेशन. 90% is open footwear. Crocs is such a beautiful India product. They are priced at 3,000 rupees. It is unbelievable that India 2 can access it. But there are local brands like Bakabuki, Neiman's who are able to provide a Crocs-like product through material innovation at a price point that is about 800-900 rupees as opposed to a Relaxo Lakhani of 500-600. Now, with a 20-25% premium, you're getting a 10x better product. And that is what India 2 is looking for, right? So, I think the next wave of large brands will be very India 2. They have not come to the party yet.
Right, not even started.
No, it's just getting started, the party.